This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And greetings, my friends, patriots, lovers of democracy, truth, and justice, believers in peace, freedom, and the American way. TGIF, Shabbat Shalom, Juma Mubarak, however you say it. Happy Friday, and it being Friday. The first hour of our program is our national town hall meeting with the guy I think of as America's senator. Vermonters know that he's theirs. Senator Bernie Sanders. Senator Sanders, welcome.
Great to be with you, Tom.
Always great to have you with us. What's on your mind today, and what are you seeing happening in D.C.?
My mind is still on the fact that I was up late last night on the floor of the Senate dealing with the Keystone Pipeline and climate change.
Oh, my.
So let me start right there. And that is, I offered an amendment, Tom, that could not have been simpler. And what the amendment said in so many words is that the scientific community is virtually unanimous in telling us that climate change is real, that it is caused by human activity and the emission of carbon, that it is already causing devastating problems in the United States and around the world, that we have a short window of opportunity to reverse climate change and prevent irreparable damage to the planet, and that we have to be aggressive in moving away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainable energy. Now, do you hear anything radical or off the wall in that amendment?
I don't recall Karl Marx writing about any of those things.
No, but the point about it is this is what the scientific community is telling us.
Yeah.
This is the most common sense amendment that one could imagine, that we have to that climate change is real, and if we're going to leave the planet to our kids in a way that is habitable and decent, then we have to transform our energy system. Well, the reality is that my Republican colleagues, and a few Democrats, were more concerned about the Koch brothers and the energy companies than they are about the scientific community. And we got zero support from the Republicans on this. They voted to table it. So what is distressing is not only when you deal with climate change, but can you imagine doing public policy by rejecting science? We put huge amounts of money into bridges and infrastructure. We listen to engineers. We put huge amounts of money into cancer research and heart research and how you deal with diabetes. We listen to doctors. But somehow or another, when it comes to the issue of climate change, which has such a profound impact on the entire planet, virtually all of my Republican friends are much more interested in listening to the Koch brothers and ExxonMobil than they are to the scientific community. So that is an issue that the Keystone debate continues. And we'll talk more about that in the future.
It's also a reflection of the impact of money on politics, isn't it?
It absolutely is. That's what I meant when you listen to the Koch brothers. Now, by the way, as you may know, the first primary of this year is being held this weekend in Palm Springs, California. And it's being held by the Koch brothers. Apparently, a number of Republican candidates or people considering running for president are going to explain to the Koch brothers why they should be the choice of the Koch brothers and be the recipients of many, many hundreds of millions of dollars when they run for president. And if you take a deep breath, Tom, and you step back and you say, whoa, what is going on with American democracy when you are going to have a whole lot of national media there, when it is a huge deal of which candidate can make his case to the Koch brothers that they should be the Koch brothers' candidate for president. And that's really what's going on this weekend in Palm Springs. And what a long step that is away from what American democracy has traditionally been and is supposed to be. One person, one vote. Ordinary people get involved in the process. And now candidates are selling themselves to a family worth $85 billion that is prepared to pour hundreds of millions of dollars into a campaign. That is why midweek I held an event with Public Citizen, People for the American Way, and other organizations who are fighting very, very hard to overturn this disastrous Citizens United Supreme Court decision. And this week was the 5th anniversary of that horrendous decision. And as I've said many, many times, if we do not overturn Citizens United, if we do not stop the ability of the Koch brothers and other billionaire families to flood the system with unlimited amounts of money, the future of democracy in this country is pretty dim. I also this week did an event with a number of members from the House, Rosa DeLauro, Pete DeFazio, and others, Louise Slaughter, talking about Trans-Pacific Partnership. I thought that the president last week gave a good State of the Union address, and I think he made the point that we've come a long way in the last 6 years. But it is clear to me, and I think that any working person in this country understands, that we still have a very, very long way to go, because there are millions of people continuing to work longer hours for low wages. There was just a study that came out the other day pointing out how the majority of American people, if they are hit by something like a serious illness or an automobile accident, they don't have the money to deal with that. They have to either borrow money or go to their credit card or, switch money around within their limited budgets. You got a majority of people in this country who are struggling day after day just to keep their heads above water economically. So yes, we are better than we were 6 years ago, but we still have a very, very, very long way to go in terms of raising wages, creating decent paying jobs, providing health care to all of our people, making college affordable. Got a long, long way to go to do what we should be doing for America's sinking middle class. We are going to be on another issue when we talk about creating decent paying jobs, and I know a lot of callers have called up on this issue over the years, is what the economists tell us, Tom, is that the fastest way to create decent paying jobs is to invest in our crumbling infrastructure. And that means our roads and our bridges and our water systems and our wastewater plants and our airports, our dams, our levees, our rail system. And when you do that, you make the country more efficient, you make it safer, and we also can create and maintain something like 13 million jobs with a $1 trillion investment. And we've been working with the American Society of Civil Engineers. We'll be holding an event next week talking about this legislation and what it would mean to America. And just think about what would happen to our country if from coast to coast there were people at work improving our rail system, rebuilding our bridges, so many of which are in serious disrepair, rebuilding our roads and putting all of those people to work. Broadband in rural areas. It would transform America and provide a huge economic opportunity to whole lots of people. So those have been some of the issues that I have been working on in the last week.
Yeah, I saw a piece on Alternate about how the Republicans say that they're allowing votes on amendments, but whenever Democrats offer amendments, they table them. Did they table your amendment?
Yes, they did. That's
so
exactly
they refused to hold a vote on it.
See, what they do, now for all intent and purposes, a table vote is a no vote, but it obscures it a little bit. So instead of having the courage to let their people vote on this, what they do is table it. Now, tabling means technically that we're not going to deal with it, but it essentially is a no vote.
Wow. Remarkable. Senator Bernie Sanders is with us. It's our national town hall meeting today, Brunch with Bernie. Senator Sanders will be taking your calls right after this break, so please stick around. We'll be back with more of Brunch with Bernie here on the Thom Hartmann Program. Be sure to check out Bernie's website, by the way, sanders.senate.gov, and on his Facebook page.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And on Twitter at Senator Sanders. We'll be right back. And welcome back. 15 minutes past the hour. Senator Sanders on the line with us. Gary in Arlington, Louisiana, watching Free Speech TV. Gary, you are on the air with Senator Sanders.
Thank you. Senator Sanders, I was wondering about the veterans with what they're going to do with disability payments. I know they get some out of the veterans part, but don't they also get some out of disability Social Security?
Gary, thanks for the question, and thanks for raising an issue that I didn't discuss in my opening remarks. The answer is yes. Right now, many veterans receive disability benefits from the VA. And as a result of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, a whole lot have come home. A whole lot of our vets have come home with PTSD and traumatic brain injury and other problems, and they are getting assistance from the VA. And by the way, in that area, we are doing our best to improve the process within the disability system to make sure the veterans get their claims adjudicated a lot faster than they used to. But I think what Gary is also talking about is an issue that I hope people pay rapt attention to. And that is that the very first thing that the Republicans in the House of Representatives did is pass a rule which, for all intent and purposes, will enable them to cut back on disability benefits, which will impact millions of people, including a significant number of veterans. And here is the story on that. For many, many years, what we have done, what the government has done, is looked at Social Security, which has benefits going out to retirees as well as disabled people. What they have said is that when one of those two pots became depleted, they transferred money, adjusted money from one pot to the other. They did that 11 times, 4 times under Ronald Reagan. Well, what's happening right now is the disability pot is being depleted. The normal course of action is to take money from the retirement fund. The Republicans are saying, no, they are not going to do that. And unless there are cuts in Social Security, et cetera, et cetera. So this is an issue we are going to be paying very, very close attention to. But here's the bottom line on that. When you combine both of those pots, Social Security has $2.8 billion in the trust fund, can pay out every benefit owed to every eligible American for the next 19 years. Now, my goal, and what we're going to be fighting very hard with, and I'm working with people like Sherrod Brown, Elizabeth Warren, Sheldon Whitehouse, Richard Blumenthal, and others, is not only to extend Social Security well beyond 19 years, but to expand the benefits. Because you got a lot of folks out there, including many elderly people, who today are getting almost all of their income from Social Security, and they are not making it on $12,000, $13,000, $14,000 a year. You can't buy your food, you can't heat your home, you can't pay for your medicine on $12,000, $13,000 a year. Just can't do it. So we're going to work to expand it. Republicans want to cut it, and we need everybody's support in this fight.
Senator Sanders will be back with more answers to your questions in just a moment. 20 minutes past the hour. Past the hour. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. And it's our Brunch with Bernie hour. Senator Bernie Sanders on the line with us. And Sue in Green Bay, Wisconsin. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hi, welcome back. And good to have you back this week. Thank you guys for all the work you do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sue.
Okay. The couple of things that I want to say or want to ask about, what is being done to rein in Feinstein and the NSA and to prosecute the torture, or prosecute for the torture that's been done, people like Rumsfeld and Hayden. They've done more to damage our national security than just about anybody else in history.
Well, I was glad to hear the president at the State of the Union speech say that it is not the policy of the United States to torture. I think that what we have seen, and that's also the reason why he wants to shut down Guantanamo Bay. I think, as I understand Sue's point, is that what we have done in that regard has just been so horrible in terms of how the United States is regarded throughout the world. So clearly, we have got to not engage in torture. And second of all, not only from a moral perspective, I think what some of the leading experts in the world, and people like John McCain, who was a prisoner of war, was through it. What they say is, you know what, it doesn't work. Because when people are tortured, they will tell you what you want to hear. And it's not necessarily the truth. So I think Sue is absolutely right. It has done us harm. And I think those people who lied about what was going on have got to be dealt with appropriately.
Austin in Columbus, Nebraska, right? Do I have that right, Austin?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, you're on the air with Senator Sanders.
I was hoping you could talk a bit about what you would like to do to replace free trade. What sort of policies you would like to see implemented instead?
That's a good question, Austin. Right now, to be honest, most of my focus is against what's going on, which is the Trans-Pacific Partnership. But you ask a very reasonable question. What's the alternative? Well, I think the alternative has got to be built around the fact that the United States of America is the largest market in the world, and we consume more products. And I think the word has got to go out to all of corporate America, the people who every night on television, we take it for granted. You turn on TV tonight, and almost every ad that you see comes from a major multinational corporation. Buy this product, buy that product. Meanwhile, they've shut down thousands of plants in the United States, laid off millions of workers, and they produce those products in China. So I think we have enormous leverage in a dozen different ways, through tax policy, through trade policy, to not only say to those companies, but demand, put into practice policies which create a situation where those companies are producing those products here in the United States. So that's the foundation that I work on. You want us to buy your products, and we do. How about developing policies which create a situation where those products are manufactured in the United States of America? There was a report that just came out in Vermont a couple of weeks ago. My memory is correct. In the last 10, 11 years, we have lost 30% of our manufacturing jobs. And those jobs historically have paid higher wages than many other types of jobs. So that's the foundation that I begin with. You can use tax policy to do that. You can do a number of policies. But the goal is corporate America, come home. Let us rebuild our manufacturing sector, pay your workers here a decent wage.
Michael in Chesterton, Indiana. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Thank you very much, Tom. Senator Sanders, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for all the good work you guys do. The question I have is, what can me and my friends, we're all union men and women, what can we do to get involved politically to offset the problems of the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, to get someone like you, Senator, to run for president? How can we help out? That's the question.
Well, Mike, thanks very much for the call. And you can do everything. I mean, you and millions of other people can make the difference in terms of what kind of country we leave our kids and our grandchildren. In a week from now, the Super Bowl is going to be played. And I'll be watching it, and I root for the New England Patriots. And millions of people all over this country, they're going to be talking about Tom Brady, and they're going to be talking about all the... You know what, Michael? There will be far more attention paid to the Super Bowl, far more thought given to the Super Bowl than to what's happening to the middle class in this country. And that's a cultural thing, and the media kind of pushes that. We got to worry about the Super Bowl. We don't worry about our jobs going to China. We don't worry about our kids not being able to afford to go to college. We don't worry about the single mom down the street who can't afford food for her kids. And what we have got to do, Mike, in a creative way, is bring people together to say, you know what? You really want to be a patriotic American? then you're going to have to sit down. We're going to have to learn these issues. We're going to have to discuss these issues. And we are going to have to tell our elected officials to start listening to us. The political outrage of the time, Mike, is that what goes on here in Washington is so separated from what the American people want. As I mentioned a moment ago, Republicans want to cut Social Security. The American people want to expand Social Security. How do they get away with it? They get away with it because people don't know what's going on. So, Michael, to answer your question, the role that you and trade unionists and people who are not in unions can play, bring people together. Do a potluck. Sit down and just start discussing what people in their own hearts think are the important issues facing this country. And once you start that, good things will happen. The next thing you do is maybe you'll invite somebody from the state legislature into a room with 20 or 30 people and say, look, these are our concerns. What are you doing about it? And then invite your congressman and then invite your senator. So, Mike, getting people involved at the local level is the most important thing that we could do.
That is the greatest lesson in political activism 101 I've heard in a long time. Senator, thank you for that. Senator Bernie Sanders with us. It's our Brunch with Bernie hour. We'll be back right after the news here at the bottom of the hour with your questions for Senator Sanders in our National Town Hall meeting, Brunch with Bernie.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-536-2370.
And, of course, you can check out Bernie's site, sanders.senate.gov. You can join his email list. It's a great little newsletter, Bernie Buzz. To the True People's Media, the Thom Hartmann Program. It's our Brunch with Bernie hour. Senator Bernie Sanders on the line taking your calls. Senator, you're with us?
I'm right here.
Okay. Robert in Streeter, Illinois. You are on the air with Senator Sanders.
I had a question about also the Social Security disability insurance. I am currently on it, and I've noticed that they are going to try to cut me 20%. And I wanted to know what the process is going to be to try to reverse this decision by the Republicans. And I also had a comment. I've been listening about the jobs all going overseas. I used to work for a manufacturing company, and we did jobs for states, and we were required to source all of our parts in the United States. And if we could not source the parts in the United States, we had to come up with a good, plausible reason why we could not source that part. And is that something that we could carry on possibly to the federal government to keep jobs in our country? Thank you.
Robert, thanks very much for your good questions. The second question essentially deals with Buy America provisions. And I absolutely agree with that. A couple of years ago, I went to the Smithsonian Museum of American History. And what I found there is most of the products they sold in the gift store were made in China and other countries. And we helped improve that situation to say, this is the Museum of American History. Might be a pretty good idea if the products you sold were actually made in the United States of America. And we have got to do that all over this country. We did a little bit of that within the Veterans Administration as well. So that's number one. The answer is yes. And by the way, one of the worries we have about the Trans-Pacific Partnership is those types of laws giving higher priority or making sure that products for government are made in America, they can be made illegal by the TPP because foreign competitors would say, hey, that's unfair to us. In terms of disability, you ask, what are we going to do? We're going to do a lot about it. I would say that making certain that Social Security benefits and disability benefits are not cut is absolutely one of my highest priorities, and I think I can speak for many other members in the Senate as well. We live in a country where the wealthiest people are doing phenomenally well. Largest corporations are enjoying record-breaking profits. We have a tax system that provides huge loopholes to the wealthy and large corporations. And instead of attacking people who have disability issues, instead of attacking nutrition programs or education programs, clearly what we need to do is ask the wealthy and large corporations to start paying their fair share of taxes. Going after the most vulnerable people in this country, people who are living with disability issues, is to me both a moral outrage and just very bad economics.
Darren in Wilmington, North Carolina. You are on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hello. First of all, it's a delight to be able to talk with you, Senator Sanders. I'm a young progressive and democratic socialist, I suppose, and I was wondering if you had any specific advice for how younger Americans like me could become more active politically and get our voices heard more in politics by spreading a progressive message around our community and electing great leaders like you and Senator Warren.
Darren, thanks very much for the question, and I'm glad you asked it. In this last election, Darren, 80% of young people did not vote. Meanwhile, youth unemployment is 18%. Meanwhile, young people are graduating college deeply in debt, and others can't even afford to go to college. Meanwhile, we are seeing climate change bring irreparable harm to this planet, which is going to impact your generation and your kids' generation in a very significant way. So the stakes are enormous for young people to get involved in the political process. I think, and you asked the same question in a sense that Michael from Indiana asked a few moments ago, and it is the most important question. And this is the answer. The answer is that politics, in my view, is not that complicated. People sit around and they shoot the bull with people, with their friends and family members on all kinds of issues. I would suggest that you sit down with your friends, do it with a potluck, do it with some hamburgers and hot dogs or spaghetti and meatballs. Needn't be an expensive proposition. Bring people together and say, okay, what are the issues that affect your lives? Yeah, we know the Super Bowl is coming. We know this, we know that. But actually, take a moment. Tell me, what's going on? Well, I'm worried about what kind of job I'm going to get. I'm worried about whether I'll ever be able to afford a house. I'm worried about how I'm going to pay off my college debts. I'm worried about whether I can afford to get married. Talk about the issues that are important to your lives. And then you know what you want to do? Bring 20 people, 30 people together and invite your local city councilor to come to a meeting. And they may come or they may not come. If they don't come, remind them at election time. Reach out. See where these guys are coming from. If you're not happy with what they're saying, talk about having somebody run for that position, somebody in the state legislature. Talk about inviting your congressperson to a meeting that you put together. You decide what the issues are. The problem is right now, people are just frustrated, they're disgusted, they're angry. Instead of sitting down, coming up with an agenda that is relevant to their lives. It is not the Republican agenda of cutting Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid and giving tax breaks to billionaires. Nobody thinks that makes sense. What is the agenda that young people feel is important? Bring people together, discuss it, argue it, and then invite people. Then talk about running people. But we don't make the political revolution that we need in this country. That is the political revolution. When people are talking about the issues most important to them, getting involved in the political system, running for office, holding their elected officials accountable. That's how we transform American politics. And that's how we transform our country. And that is a radically different approach than what goes on in Palm Springs this weekend, where the Koch brothers, worth $85 billion, are inviting their presidential candidates to talk to them. That's one approach. The other approach is grassroots politics, which is what I'm talking about. So there's a lot to be done, Darren. Thank you for your interest. Get involved.
Senator, can I add an add-on question to that?
Sure.
The GAO. I'm sure you saw this report. This was back in October of 2014. It was referring to the 2012 election, and they found that when Kansas put into place a voter ID law. Let me preface this by pointing out that nowadays, 18-year-olds, only about half of 18-year-olds have a driver's license, whereas when you and I were kids, first thing you did when you turned 16 was get your driver's license. Now they're going off to college, they're in debt, they don't have the money, so why bother? So the very low levels of driver's license. While in Kansas, for example, while the voter ID law, I'll just quote from a piece by Reed Wilson that quotes the GAO report. Black turnout dropped 3.7 percentage points more than white turnout in Kansas. and by 1.5 more than whites in Tennessee after voter ID laws are passed. Among 18-year-olds, turnout dropped 7.1 percentage points more in Kansas.
Well, look, Tom, the Republicans are cowards. They understand that their views their views represent the billionaire class, not ordinary Americans. And they understand that the best way they can win elections is to make it harder for young people and working people to participate, people of color to participate. That's their agenda. And we got to fight that tooth and nail. And that's another example where young people can and should be involved politically.
Amen.
But the bottom line here is that people have got to rethink politics. Don't just complain about what's happening from on top. Make it happen from the bottom. Start agitating. Hold elected officials accountable, bring people together. And you know what? What I would say to Darren is when people do that, they're going to leave a meeting and say, you know what, that's pretty interesting. That's pretty good. So also I would suggest people go to my website. I do that not just to advertise for myself here, but sanders.senate.gov. Every day we have a lot of information out there that will kind of try to answer the questions as to why the rich get richer and everybody else gets poorer. So but Darren, thanks very much for your call and get your friends involved.
Bert in Rolling Meadows, Illinois. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hi, thanks, Tom, and thanks, Mr. Senators. My question is, because I'm kind of upset over the respect that's being showed to President Obama, and I can cite many examples, starting with the State of the Union, Speaker Boehner inviting Netanyahu. The most important one that I'm really upset about is Senator Menendez showing the disrespect, calling the office of the White House, the administration, comparing them, their talking points to Tehran. I mean, I was so upset when I heard that on a clip of that. I mean, can you just show me why Senator Menendez would say something? I mean, he is. I mean, the president runs the foreign policy, right? I'm trying to figure out who's running foreign policy now.
Bert, to be very honest with you, I apologize. I have not seen Senator Menendez's statement on that. I do know that Bob Menendez has very different opinions with the president on how we deal with Iran's sanctions. Maybe we'll carry that over.
Sure. We can pick it up on the other side of the break. It's 15 minutes before the hour here on the Thom Hartmann Program. Be sure to check out Bernie's website, sanders.senate.gov. It really is a great news site. The Bernie Buzz is a great newsletter. And you can also check out Senator Sanders on Facebook. Just plug in Bernie Sanders, Senator Sanders.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
And you can tweet him at Senator Sanders. We'll be right back. So, Senator Sanders, you wanted to finish that thought?
Let me just conclude. Bert was concerned about the lack of respect in general that President Obama has gotten and cited some specifics more recently. In terms of foreign policy, Bert, and in terms of politics in general, sometimes people think, well, I love President Obama, or I hate President Obama, he's always right, he's always wrong. That's not the case. Like any other human being, he is right sometimes. He may be halfway right other times, and he's wrong on other issues. He's a human being, and our job is to say, where do we agree with him? And I agree with him on many issues. On other issues, I wish he would go a lot further. And I disagree with him on issues. The Trans-Pacific Partnership is an example where I categorically disagree with him. We got to put all of that into a context. In terms of foreign policy, I generally agree with his views on Iran. Let's not forget that when you talk about foreign policy, at the end of the day, the most important manifestation of foreign policy is whether you're at war or not. When Obama came into office, we were losing troops every week in Iraq and Afghanistan, and by and large, that is over. So I think and that's a good thing to my mind. We got to try to develop international coalitions to figure out how we deal with the serious problems with ISIS and in the Middle East. So I agree with Bert that there's probably been no president that I can remember who has gotten the disrespect for a wide variety of reasons. In some cases, the color of his skin. And I think that is very unfortunate.
David in Phoenix, Arizona, watching Free Speech TV on the Dish TV satellite network. You are on the air with Senator Sanders.
Yeah, Senator Sanders and Tom, the privilege to talk to both of you. A lot of Americans would like to see many of the Guantanamo prisoners released because many of them are innocent, but we are worried that because they are so bitter that they will join the opposition. My question is, could we prevent this by paying them not to oppose us, but not just like a lump sum, but instead a monthly payment, like $5,000 to $10,000 per month? It's like $100,000 a year. It's a lot cheaper than paying the $3.5 million per year that we're paying right now for about 10 years or so. The money could be cut off if there was signs that they had joined the opposition and then they did still support us. Because after all, remember, this did work when we paid the opposition not to attack us during the surge.
Yeah, David, we have, and Saudi Arabia does this with their terrorists. We have a little less than a minute. Senator Sanders?
Well, David, I think the bottom line is, for a wide variety of reasons, some of which I mentioned today, I think we should shut down Guantanamo. I don't think that's what the United States is about. I think we should make sure that people are not being held in Guantanamo who are not guilty of terrorist activities. And I think that before we release anyone, we have to make sure they're not going to join the opposition. And when we release people, they have to be monitored very, very carefully to make sure that they are not ending up engaging in terrorist activities. And to use financial incentives on occasion may be a sensible approach.
Senator Sanders is with us for our Brunch with Bernie Hour, our national town hall meeting here every Friday on the Thom Hartmann Program. We'll be back with Senator Sanders answering your questions in just a moment. Be sure to check out his website at sanders.senate.gov, and you can find him on Facebook. You can find him all over at bernie.org, and you can tweet him at Senator Sanders. It's the place where we dare to ask, is Walmart a person, or Hobby Lobby for that matter, and we dare to say no. The Thom Hartmann Program. Welcome back. It's our national town hall meeting with Senator Bernie Sanders and Carl in Chicago. Listening on WCPT, you are on the air with Senator Sanders. Carl? Carl is apparently listening to his radio instead of his phone. Well, let's try Daryl in Cedar Crest, New Mexico, listening on KABQ.
Hi, gentlemen. I have a question about TTP. It's my understanding that if a congressman goes to review the document, he may not take notes, and he may not get a copy, and after he leaves, he can't talk to anyone about it. Is that true?
Basically true, yes. The Trade Representative's Office talks about how any member of Congress can walk right in there and read the document, and that's true. Problem is, we think this document is, we don't know because only certain excerpts of it have come out, and those have been leaked, by the way. We think that this document is thousands of pages. We know that it is a lot of complicated legalese. We know there are something like 25 separate chapters. And right now, if I wanted to, I could walk into the room, but I, to the best of my knowledge, could not copy down anything. Could not bring experts with me who understand what the legalese is about, and that's the reality. And one of the reasons that I think, we can argue about the wisdom of TPP. I think from everything I've learned about it, that it is a bad idea, continuation of NAFTA, CAFTA, PNTR with China. But I think even the process, in terms of fast track, I don't know how anybody could vote for a fast-track agreement under those types of conditions and that lack of transparency. So, Darrell, you're basically correct.
Dean in Mansfield, Louisiana. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Sanders. I'm a young man who happens to be on disability, and I rely on Social Security to help pay the bills, you know. I feel kind of underrepresented in Congress during, you know, the times they actually go to talk about people who rely on Social Security and the like, and the cuts that are going to affect elders and servicemen, you know, veterans, they're going to affect me as well. And I'm just starting out. I just got out of technical college, and it's going to make it harder for me to make ends meet before I get to a place where I can get a steady job. And here in Louisiana, there's not that many. I'd like to know what you think about, just what you would do to help that.
For younger people on disability.
Well, Dean, thanks very much for your call. And it sounds to me, just from this program alone, Tom, that there are a lot of folks out there who are very concerned about Republican proposals to cut disability, to go after Social Security in general. So, Dean, let me just assure you, as I have previous callers, that there are a number of us in the Congress who will do everything that we can to prevent these cuts. But, you know, as people say, elections have consequences. And when 63% of the American people don't vote, when many people do not pay attention to what goes on, we end up with Republicans controlling the House and the Senate. And then people wake up and they say, well, why is the Congress going to be cutting Social Security? Why do they want to cut disability benefits? Well, that's what Republicans do. And when 63% of the people don't vote, that's what you get. Having said that, we are going to fight as hard as we can because we think the overwhelming majority of the American people understand that you do not cut benefits for some of the most vulnerable people in this country, whether they're young, whether they are old, especially at a time when we have more wealth and income disparity than we have had since the 1920s. You don't go after the people who are hurting. You go after the people who are doing very, very well, and you say, you know what? You got loopholes out there. You're not paying your fair share of taxes. And the other point to remember about Social Security is when you lump together the retirement fund for Social Security and the disability fund for Social Security together, those funds can pay out every benefit owed to every eligible American for the next 19 years. It's not like there's a crisis. Next 19 years. And we cannot allow the Republicans to kind of drive a wedge between older people and people who are disabled. We're going to stand together and we're going to say we're going to extend Social Security. We're going to expand benefits. We are not going to cut benefits for people who are disabled.
We have about a minute and a half. Carl in Chicago, you have a very quick question for Senator Sanders, please.
Yeah, I was just curious if thanks for taking my call. I was just curious if people that are making money in the stock market and on dividends and capital gains, if they're contributing to Social Security.
The answer is no. This is earned income, and that is certainly one of the areas that we can look at. This is what goes on right now, is if somebody earns $2 million a year, and somebody earns $118,000 a year, they're paying the same amount into the Social Security Trust Fund. So if you could even start it at a base of $250,000 and you lift the cap on top of that, we can bring in substantial sums of money. What Carl is saying is you could bring in even more money if you included as real income capital gains, and he's right. So I think,
final 30
Tom, just to conclude, been a good show. I think people have asked a lot of very, very good questions. Clearly a lot of concern about what what kind of cuts the Republicans are proposing for Social Security and disability programs. Also, a lot of very good calls about how ordinary people can get involved in the political process. And the answer is you can. You can do it. And reach out to your friends, start talking about the issues, start bringing in your elected officials. If they choose not to meet with you, that should teach you a lesson. Start running for office. Don't let, the local television station tell you what the most important issues are. You know what those issues are. You're living them every day.
Amen. Senator Sanders, thank you again so much for being with us every Friday. Thank you for today.
Thank you.
Great talking. We'll be back with Anything Goes Friday right after this.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.